Hi everyone, do you know what is understanding the self? And we are here, the group 4, to present to you what is understanding the self by video presentation. And for today's video, we're going to discuss the chapter 1 philosophical perspective of the self. Philosophy. But what is philosophy? Philosophy is derived from the Greek word philos and sophia, which literally means love for wisdom. It is also the study of acquiring knowledge through rational thinking and requires answering questions regarding the nature and the existence of man and the world we live in. So as we continue, we are going to discuss the founders of the philosophy or the philosophers. The first philosopher is Socrates. Socrates can be considered as first martyr of education, knowledge, and philosophy. It is also the philosophy of Socrates underlines the importance of the notion knowing oneself. The second philosopher is Plato, known as the father of the academy, conceptualized the tripartite theory of the soul. The third philosopher is Aristotle. The soul, for him, is the essence of the self. The fourth one is Saint Augustine. Saint Augustine follows the idea that God encompasses us all, that everything will be better if we are with God. The fifth philosopher presented in Understanding the Self is René Descartes. René Descartes was a French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist known to be the father of modern Western philosophy. Sixth one, philosopher is John Locke. He conceptualized the term tabula rasa, which means a blank state or an empty vessel. The seventh one philosopher is Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. The eighth one, or the eighth philosopher presented here is Merleau-Ponty. Merleau-Ponty is a French philosopher known for his works on existentialism and phenomenology. His idea of self regarded the body and mind are not separated entities, but rather these two components are one at the same. The ninth philosopher presented here is David Hume. David Hume, according to him, there is no permanent self. The 10th philosopher is Immanuel Kant. He argued that the awareness of different emotions that we have, impressions, and behavior is only part of ourselves. The 11th one is Gilbert Ryle. He said that the self is the behavior presented by the person. His notion of dualism is the behavior that we show. Emotions and actions are the reflection of our mind, and as such is the manifest of who we are. The 12th is Paul Churchland. Paul Churchland focused on the idea that people should improve our association and use of words in identifying the self. He has the idea that the self is defined by movement of our brain. Sociological perspective of the self. Sociology. Sociology is the study of how human society is established, its structure, and how it works, the people's interaction with each other, and the effects they have on one another. George Herbert Mead and the social self. He rejected the idea of biological determination of the self, which proposes that an individual has already established oneself from the moment he is born. Charles Cooley and the looking glass self. The term looking glass self was created by American sociologist Charles Horton Cooley in 1902 and introduced into his work Human Nature and the Social Order. It is described as our reflection of how we think we appear to others. Jerry Lanuza and the self as a product of modern and postmodern societies. According to Jerry Lanuza, in modern societies, the attainment and stability of self-identity is freely chosen. It is no longer restricted by customs and traditions. Jean Baud Willard. According to sociologist Jean Baudrillard, in postmodern societies, individuals achieve self-identity through prestige symbols that they consume. The self, from various perspectives, includes the sociology. Sociology is a branch of social science that analyzes human societies, their connections, and the mechanism that maintains and develops them. It also focuses on the essence of society and social structure, including its forms and patterns, as well as the amount of which it impacts humans. Concept of looking glass self. It suggests that our perspective of how others view us contributes to how we see ourselves. It states that the individuals we interact with act as mirrors, reflecting our own worth and personality. George Herbert Mead. He agreed that we grow as persons through our interaction with others, according to his social behaviorism theory. Irving Goffman. He is a Canadian sociologist who believes that people live their lives as if they were performers on stage. He said that just like life in the theater stage, there is a front stage and a backstage, where in the front stage, we present ourselves as people want us to be, while in backstage, there is no possibility of revealing our true identities. The self, from various perspectives, includes anthropology. Concept of self in anthropological perspective. Culture influences the development of the self through enculturation. It guides the way we think, feel, and act. Through this process, we learn to develop unique characteristics as an individual. Cultural identity. It is an individual perception about himself or herself anchored on race, gender, nationality, religion, ethnicity, and language. Cultural identity theory explains why a person acts and behaves the way he or she does. National identity. It is the identity or feeling of belongingness to one state or nation. Rupert Emerson, a political scientist that defines the national identity as a body of people who feel that they are a nation. Brian Morris, Anthropology of the Self. For him, the concept of the self is defined as an individual's representation of his or her person as kind of self-representation. Hubert Hermans. He posited the idea that the self is considered as extended to significant others in the environment that populate the self as a dynamic multiplicity of position. The dialogical self. It regarded the self as a society of mind. An individual's sense of self is established through how one identifies himself or herself with the different positions he or she holds, internally or externally to himself or herself. The self in Western and Oriental Eastern thought. Western culture is basically about the focus on oneself and personal needs. Eastern culture is about focusing on the others and the feelings of others. Western culture is predicated and putting egoism first, while Eastern culture is about collectivism. Egoism is focused on oneself. Collectivism is all about focusing on others, while the Western culture is inclined toward more acquisition of material things. The Eastern culture is tilted towards less assets, thus the mantra less is more. Western culture is obsessed with being successful. The Eastern culture is more inclined towards long life. The Eastern culture, long life is equated with wealth. In the Eastern culture, wealth and poverty is the result of fortune and luck. For the Western culture, wealth and poverty is the result of enterprise and hard work. The Eastern culture values the wisdom of years and seniority, while the Western culture celebrates youth and being young. Philosophically, the Eastern culture subscribes to the concept of reincarnation, while Western culture subscribes to the idea of evolution. Taken as a whole, The basic and subtle differences between the Eastern culture and the Western culture are taking its toll on Filipinos on which culture to adapt. The dilemma is whether to follow and subscribe to the Western influences or subscribe to the Eastern ideas. Physical self. Physical self. It refers to the body which we interfere with our environment and fellow beings. It is a tangible aspect of the person that can be directly observed and examined. People nowadays are too conscious of how they look, how they see themselves in the mirror, how people will look at them, at what people will say about them. Our concept of ourselves and the perception of people around us will always have a big effect on how we deal in a situation, culturally or not. Self-esteem. We all know that self-esteem comes from what you think of you and not what other people think of you. Comes from Gloria Gringer. People from different cultures have opted to change their futures in an attempt to meet the expectation of cultural standards of beauty, as well as their religious and social obligations. They modify and adorn their bodies as part of complex process of creating and recreating their personal and social identity to be accepted by society and to be able to accept themselves. Most of the time, this self-esteem is defined by what physical attributes they have. Beauty is defined by the society, culture, or tradition. This is what matters to the person. Sexual self. According to psychoanalytic theory, the physical body lies at the heart of human experience as a kind of self and personality development. Understanding the human reproductive system, erogenous zone, and sexual behavior is required to appreciate sexual self. Human reproductive system. A human organ system in charge of reproduction, which includes providing and fertilizing gametes, which includes the sperm or eggs, as well as carrying offsprings. Erogenous zone or hot spots. When touched, this sensitive spot on the body promotes sexual excitement. Phases of sexual response. Arousal phase. Increased heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure characterize the first phase. Nipple hardening and vaginal lubrication in female or erection in male also occur. Plateau phase. It amplifies the effects of the excitement phase. It is the brief moment preceding orgasm. Orgasm phase. The peak or sexual climax of excitement is represented by this phase. It is characterized in involuntary, rhythmic muscle spasms throughout the body, as well as feeling of pleasure and tension release. Diversity of sexual behavior. In contrast to biological sex, sexuality refers to the ability to have sexual emotions and attraction. Sexual behavior can take many different aspects. Heterosexuality. They are attracted to their opposite sex, sexually or romantically. Homosexuality. Represent the attraction to the people of their same gender. Bisexuality. It is a preference for both males and females or for more than one gender. Transsexuality. It is the identification of oneself as member of the opposite gender. Transgenderism. It is someone who has a gender identification that differs from their assigned sex at birth. They interpret themselves as a third gender. Natural and artificial method of contraception. Contraception. It minimizes pregnancy-related morbidity and mortality, the risk of getting sexually transmitted disease or the STD, and also for abortion to avoid unintended pregnancies. Natural contraception. Natural birth control is a way of avoiding pregnancy that does not include the use of drug or physical contraptions. These ideas are founded on knowledge and observation of a woman's body and menstrual cycle. Artificial contraception. Artificial birth control is a variety of contraception methods. These are various sorts of artificial contraception produce, but not all of them are appropriate in all circumstances. It is determined by the individual's health, age, sexual behaviors, and/or numbers of partners.
The material and economical self. William James. Who is William James? He is known as the father of American psychology and recognized several components of the empirical self, one of which he referred to as the material self. Now, let us know what is material self. The material self comprises assets that the person owns or entities to which individual belongs. Therefore, the material self is constituted of things like the body, family, clothes, money, and so on. This notion proposes that the items, in addition to contributing to how an individual identifies himself, herself, also represents people's relationship with others according to what they have. These belongings are regarded as expression of people's identities. For example, the circle of friends you belong to expresses a certain aspect of your character, and you refer to them as my friends. Now, let us move on to the spiritual self. William James said to believe that people have different social selves depending on the setting of each social situation. On the other hand, the spiritual self alludes to the most intimate and important part of the self that includes the person's purpose, core values, conscience, and moral behavior. Manifestations of spiritual self. The first manifestation, person's will, refers to one's wishes. These are the things we want to see and achieve in our lives. Next, intelligence and abilities. These are the perceived strengths of a person, the things they have a certain level of confidence with their mastery on what specific task or doing they do. Morals. It is the definition of what is right and wrong. These are the things that are acceptable to a person, society, and at the same time have a positive effect on action depending on the situation and environment that is surrounded by people. Values. Distinguishing what is important or not with one's value system that is able to prioritize the things or tasks that need to be done or resolved immediately. In the Philippines, there are different beliefs that are based on the teachings to churches, related to the religions that they follow according to the race, gender, and many more, which makes the individual unable to accept and expect how other people think on how exactly like him. Then we will have an easier time to create an environment that promotes individuality or every member of the society. The practice of religion. Religion is a collection of organized ideas, practices, and systems that most commonly pertain to the belief and worship of a dominating power, such as personal God or another supernatural creature. While this is a fundamental description, there are many various interpretations of religion, and not all faiths are centered on individuals' belief. Difference of religion and spirituality. Religion and spirituality are two related yet distinct terms associated with faith. Religion denotes a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, usually involving devotional and ritual observance and a moral code. In contrast, spirituality can be defined as the quality of being spiritual. Beliefs. Myth, a traditional story usually incorporating supernatural beings or events about the early story of a people or explaining some natural or social phenomenon. Rituals, a religious or somber ritual consisting of a series of actions carried out in a specific order. The two types are calendric and crisis. Supernatural. The supernatural refers to happenings or entities that are not susceptible to natural laws. Though the related phrase nature has had numerous connotations since the ancient world, the term supernatural developed in the medieval period and did not exist in the ancient world. Function of religion. Emotional function. Cope up with their emotion while experiencing such anxieties. Cognitive function. Enabling humans to explain unexplainable phenomena. And the last is social function. To control, build, and create solidarity. Now let's talk about political self. Developing a Filipino identity, values, traits, community, and institutional factors. Collective action, shared vision is very crucial in the construction of everyone's identity in the sense of democratic standpoint. In the socio-psychological perspective, citizenship or being a Filipino serves as cognitive and motivational basis for one's belief in democracy, awareness, and understanding of self in community. There are three major concerns in building an identity. The first is instrumental. An act in accordance with rules and identities consists with supportive of democratic processes. The second is morals, values and beliefs in democratic principles. And the last is transformative, includes process of self-reflection in individuals, institutions, and communities. Aspects in developing Filipino identity: individual attitude and traits, institutional factors, macro factors, and societal. Establishing a democratic culture. Democratic culture is defined as the desire and ability of individuals in a population to actively participate in the governance of public affairs affecting them, both individually and collectively. Democratic agenda includes the following: improve the political and social environment and reduce poverty and enable citizens to fulfill their rights and obligations. Continually re-examining societal institutions in public and private sectors. Incorporate cross-cultural activities. Further promotes the use of the Filipino language in all transactions. Continue to harness mechanism to exercise citizenship and democracy. Digital self, self and others in cyberspace. Digital self is a must we put on to draw in the innovative world. With the digital technologies such as web page, online games, virtual worlds, social media, smartphones, internet, self-extension is extensive. There are 5 digital dimensions. Number 1 is dematerialization. This term was coined to describe why knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, we regard our possessions as part of ourselves. The embodiment. Bulk describes the embodiment as how in the age of social media, our faces are seen so much online that we have to become online avatars. Number 3. Sharing. It has been proposed as a way of understanding how individuals negotiate everyday privacy in the online environment, even though it is under-conceptualized. Number 4. Co-construction of self. Affirmation of self. Building aggregate extended self. Attachment to virtual possessions in video games. Number 5. Distributed memory. The non-digital objects that form a part of the extended self are often able to provide a sense of the past through their association with events and people in our lives. Back 1991. These include photographs, souvenirs, etc. While in the digital world, all your memories can be recorded and archived to view later. What is self-presentation? Self-presentation is behavior that attempts to convey some information about oneself or some image of oneself to other people. These behaviors are activated by the evaluate presence of other people and by other knowledge of one's behavior. 2 types of self-presentation. Number 1. Pleasing the audience. This type of self-presentation which try to match self to the audience expectation and preference. Number 2. Self-construction. This type of self-presentation tries to match oneself to one's own ideal self. The expression of the audience pleasing motive varies across situations.
Multiple aspects of the self. Higgins 1987 argues that there are 3 domains of the self: the actual self, the ideal self, and the at self. Number 1. Actual self. This refers to the attributes an individual possesses. Number 2. Ideal self. This refers to the attributes an individual would ideally possess. Number 3. At self. This refers to the attributes an individual ought to possess. According to Higgins, the discrepancies between the actual self and ideal self leads to feelings of dejection. Our sense of self helps organize our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Our overall self-evaluation influences our cognitive processes. Becoming a better student. As a person, growth is an inevitable goal and change will always be present in what we do. As such, for students, the need to understand that just barely passing the different subjects and graduating after is not necessarily is the best option for successfully landing your dream job or becoming successful in the world of work. To become a better student, several things are needed to be done. Aside from just listening from the discussions and following the directions taught by the teachers, a student should be able to have a better understanding of what they are doing, have the ability to recognize and sort the different information that they are encountering, and to be able to have a certain level of understanding on the concepts that they are studying in which could result in better applications and appreciation of such learnings. Now let us know the 5 tips to become a better student. Number 1. Prepare before going to school. Always try to research or read the next lesson. Do your assignments at home or before going to school. Eat and have proper rest before going to school. Number 2. Use different resources. Aside from books provided for the class, don't forget to use the library and the internet. Using different resources will enable you as a student to access more information and be able to learn the latest learnings and information related to the subject matter that you are studying. Number 3. Be critical and make learning personal. Know what you are learning, why you are learning, and how they are important to you and your plans in life. Number 4. Ask help. The school may focus on the interaction between the teachers and students, but the institution is comprised of more than what or who are inside the classroom, and the people in the school from the guidance office, librarian, registrar, and etc. And even people outside the school such as your parents and friends or other professionals can help you as a student to break limitations. It's the difficulties that is brought about by the requirements of the curriculum. Number 5. Do other things. The school provides co-curricular or extracurricular activities. Join clubs or school groups to widen your experience as a student. Not only can you have better relationships, which will translate to more help in the future, but an active body and mind that may or may not necessarily. Setting goals for success. Bandura's self-efficacy. It is the belief in one's own ability to attain goals or manage events in one's life in order to have a positive experience. It is the belief that one can have impact on events that affect one's well-being. Bandura, 1964. 4 ways to build self-efficacy. Number 1. Mastery experience. Failure can be used as a learning opportunity and a chance to reach out our goal with a different approach. Number 2. Social modeling. Social networking can be a great way to find role models in this day and age. Bandura believes that drawing role models from one's own social environment is essential. Number 3. Social persuasion. It's about having others, role models, have a direct impact on one's self-efficacy by providing opportunities to master experience. And last, states of physiology. Self-efficacy can be influenced by our own emotions, moods, and physical health. Dweck's mindset theory. Dweck used the term mindset to describe the beliefs, procedures, or notations held by one or more people or group of people in response to a specific activity. There are 2 kinds of mindset. The first is fixed mindset. A person's personality is innate or inborn. It essentially describes who you are and how God created you. Next is growth mindset or the incremental mindset. People think that through training and a desire to learn, one's qualities and traits may be altered. Goal setting theory. It states that there is a relationship between the difficulty and specificity of a goal and the ability of a person to complete the activity. There are 5 principles of goal setting. Let's talk about them. Number 1. Clarity. Goals that are precise, measurable, and unambiguous. The number 2 is challenge. Set a goal for yourself to achieve.
And the number 3 is commitment. The more difficult the aim, the more dedication is required. The number 4 is feedback. Pay attention to what people have to say so you may clarify expectations, adjust goals difficulty, and get acknowledgement. And the last principle is task complexity. The more difficult and demanding the role, the more motivated the person will be. Taking charge of one's health. Stressors and responses. Stress is a person's reaction to threatening occurrences. Every one of us has our own set of resources, understanding of the world, and manner of experiencing things. We all have various pressures. What one individual perceives as a threat, another perceives as a challenge. Stress effect on the body. The musculoskeletal, respiratory, cardiovascular, endocrine, gastrointestinal, neurological, and reproductive systems are affected by stress. Our systems are well prepared to handle stress, but when that stress becomes long-term or chronic, it can have catastrophic consequences. Stress in Filipinos. The social and cultural dimension of stress. Stress causes physical and mental disorders in Filipinos, which can be both temporary and life-threatening. On the other hand, it can be managed through culture. Filipinos, for example, have different stress threshold and coping mechanism. Men and women express emotions in different ways at the same time. Tiis, endurance, and kim-kim, resistance, are used to deal with stressful conditions, repression.
So the reflection here in the week 1 topic of chapter Philosophical Self is philosophy broadens one's understanding and enjoyment of things. It can provide self-awareness, foresight, and the sense of purpose in life. It allows for a more in-depth, holistic examination of thought. Reflection. Sociological imagination enables us to mentally distance ourselves from our limited experience and see the connection between private concerns and social issues. It enables us to trace the relationship between our own patterns and events of our society. In the week 3 reflection, when we look in the mirror, we may think or imagine how others will judge us based upon our looks. And this can lead to an emotional reaction based on how we interpret others' judgments. We try to compare ourselves to people we assume that are superior or inferior to us. Nonetheless, for some people, comparing oneself motivates them to work even harder to improve or to be a better version of themselves. However, while we cannot control how others respond, think, or feel about us, we can control our own inner peace, which begins the moment we choose not to let other person or situation controls our thought and feelings. Week 4 Reflection. It highlights how all the elements work together to build societal culture. Learning about cultural anthropology studies assists us to become more aware of diverse cultural situations that we are oblivious of. In the week 5 reflection, Western thinkers like Freud believes that the self is divided into two, and that I and me. I refer to how you think, act, and feel. Me refers to the physical, characteristic, and psychological thoughts about yourself. Eastern thoughts like Taoism by Lao Tzu, it is more concerned on how individuals live in society than believing in God. The individual should live with the accordance of Tao, which means the universe. Week 6 Reflection. Being beautiful on the inside is far more important than being appealing on the exterior. Even though appearances are transient, being attractive on the inside is considered less important than being beautiful on the exterior. Each of us has our own unique form of beauty. You are lovely and wonderful beauty in your own right, and accepting all of your defects defines true beauty, regardless of who you are or where you came from, your skin color, or your gender identity. What really matters is how you look at yourself and not others look at you. Week 7, Realization or Reflection. Sexual self is the entirety of oneself as a sexual being, encompassing many forms of sexual behavior and perceptions. Understanding the fundamentals of sexual behavior is a critical, since knowledge about your sexuality is one of the most significant aspects of your health and body care. It entails knowing everything that there is to know about your body, your emotions, and your good relationship. Furthermore, while you may not share the same sexual behavior preferences, gender identity, or sexual orientation, appreciating others' diversity fosters an environment of support and respect, which can guide all people comprehend sexuality and achieve excellent sexual health.
Possessions are viewed as personal choices that identify you as a person to some extent. These personal decisions shape one's material and economic self. Your possessions and experience define who you are. Recognizing what to prioritize and how to discover things that define your personal identity will give you a better understanding of yourself and what you are capable of.
Spiritual self and political self have different aspects in understanding ourselves. In an environment and society we are capable of moving in, and as a part of it, many of these realizations and knowledge will help us, a person, to understand the self.
Realization of Week 11. When you're online, you present yourself as your digital self. Some people have multiple online identities that are distinct from their real-world selves, while others have a single online identity that is similar to the one they inhabit in real world.
Becoming a good student is not an easy task. Most would agree that in order to be a good student, it takes a good deal of hard work, time, and self-discipline. Setting goals help us stay motivated in the long and short term. The concepts of goal setting are critical for us to be able to define a precise objective. It directs us in the right direction to achieve our goal. Taking control of our health care will help us feel better and reduce stress. It is critical that we take care of our own health because our physical, mental, and emotional health and well-being are all affected.